You know, Mace, I love alliteration. So Marvin Mims Monday is perfect for today because we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Broncos' second-year wide receiver and just where he can be or get to this year, Mace.
We do, and it's also worth asking the question, could he have taken some steps to get closer last year? And how much of that was within his control?
Right. How much was in his control and how much was it Sean Payton? I almost feel like of the clip we have of Sean Payton, Mace, we should play it pretty early on because it kind of sets the stage for the entire discussion today, including our observations from Marvin Mims from last Thursday and the Thursday before that.
Well, why don't we just jump right in then? Why don't we just hear what Sean Payton has to say, and let's set up the pins and then knock them down, hitting the head pin right there in the pocket.
I think one of the challenges, I've said this, and I'll say it again, we were as much responsible for, I don't want to say holding him back, but man, you're trying to get snaps with Jerry, you're trying to get snaps with Courtland, and so I think we'll see a lot of growth from year one to year two. He's tough. He made a real good play today. We know he's a good returner. We felt that was one of the strengths, obviously, that we saw on tape, but we saw transitional speed. We saw the things that you need to have at that receiver position. So I don't think it was his development as much as, and I don't want to say a crowded room, but just, trying to create enough touches for those guys. And now we have a room, and look, we have a lot of young players. I think size is certainly something you see at the receiver position right now. And I'm anxious as we go through this process to watch these guys. This first half of these OTAs have gone really good. I mean, really good. And I told them that. I like the energy. I feel like we're younger. And you kind of feel that at practice.
You feel it.
You embrace the youth, but here's the thing. Last year, Marvin Mims Jr., can you tell me how many games he played more than 32 offensive snaps?
Wow. I would say the number is less than 5.
1.
Okay.
He played 52 snaps against Buffalo coming off of the bye. Every other game, the maximum he played was 32 snaps. He did play more in the second half of the season than he did the first half. I mean, I remember sitting here doing a show with you, Cecil, and we're talking about how his snap count, even though he's the dude responsible for the explosive plays that are, keeping the offense some degree of humming, in week 2 had 113 yards on a couple of receptions, week 3 in Miami, and that debacle, 73 yards on 3 catches. Yeah, and yet he didn't play more than 20 snaps until week 8.
Right.
It's like, what are you doing here? And the thing is, Sean Payton mentions Jerry Jeudy, says, okay, we had other guys to get snaps for. At some point, you got to rip off the Band-Aid and say, hey, I really like this young guy. We're going to play him. And, ultimately, if you're the head coach, you can do that. You have the ability to do that. It's your choice. The buck stops with you. You can make that happen.
Yeah.
How do you let that happen if you really want this guy to play more?
Well, and he said crowded room there in that clip we played, Mace. And I was like, well, if they hadn't gone on that win streak and at the trade deadline they had gotten rid of Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton or both, now that's not a crowded room. Like, I don't want to turn this into a what if episode. We got plenty of those coming up for everybody.
And we've got something about that involves trades there.
Yes, trade at the trade deadline. But it's like you controlled Mims. Like he couldn't get on the field. Yeah, crowded room, but he flashed. You mentioned that couple catches for 100 yards. Like he certainly flashed as a receiver. We could have seen more.
In the end, after weeks 2 and 3, when he had 188 yards on 5 receptions in those 2 games, Cease, we didn't see him get more than 50 yards or even get 50 yards receiving until Christmas Eve against New England. Think about that. So you saw the glimpses in the early part of the season, and then it's like, well, let's put him back in a drawer. Let's not use him anymore. It's one of the most frustrating things about this offense, and one of the more frustrating things about the first season for the Broncos, because you could have figured things out a little bit earlier with Marvin Mims. Instead, we're sitting here always asking, can he sprout some more branches on the route tree? And that being the determinant as to whether he's going to play a lot more and be a lot more effective in year 2 than he was in year 1.
Mm-hmm. And I've got the Peyton Manning thought in my head, like experience is the best teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He missed out on that experience. How much better would Marvin Mims be now when we see him in OTAs had he gotten that experience? We're left to wonder, Mace, but not to use our past as a hammock. We should use the past as a springboard. I'm encouraged by, and I got that from the Magic GM years ago.
You know something, though?
Hmm.
If you've wound the hammock tight enough, it can be a springboard.
It can be both.
Yes.
But as I look forward to Marvin Mims, I've been encouraged by what we've seen at OTAs. Mainly, I'm watching him not lean and the way he would lean and tip off his route. And I'm seeing much more explosion out of his cuts. He's already fast. We know that. But last year as a rookie, his route running left some things to be desired.
That's very fair. And it's one of the reasons why they were reticent to use him more. We figured out very early, if you give him a 9 ball, he can make something happen. But the thing is, you got to give him the 9 ball on something that has timing. It's not Courtland Sutton breaking it off, figuring it out, and then, let's throw up a jump ball, which basically became the most effective dynamic part of Russell Wilson's passing game, was moving around and then jump ball to 14. Let's see if he can get it. Or, okay, there's a very tight window here. I'll try Courtland in the end zone. You know what? It led to some really spectacular plays, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But when the spectacular is, if not the only tool, one of a limited range of tools that you have on your belt, it's not a prescription for long-term effectiveness, which is part of the reason why we're sitting here talking about a quarterback room of Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix trying to get Marvin Mims Jr. the ball.
Right. And the timing and rhythm of this offense are important for a guy like Mims, because he could be, and I'll say this because maybe he didn't get along with Sean Payton as much as he should have, but maybe like Brandon Cooks was, right? If we think of Saints receivers, we usually think of the big guys. We think of Michael Thomas, probably first and foremost. Marcus Colston is in that conversation. Well, he had some fast little guys as well. And Brandon Cooks was one of those guys. Again, maybe the two didn't get along real well. That's perhaps for another show. But with Mims, timing and rhythm, precision, it's his game.
Turning it back further than Brandon Cooks, remember Devery Henderson?
Of course.
Who Peyton inherited after a couple of seasons. And, Henderson had a year in 2008 when he averaged nearly 25 yards a reception for Sean Payton. 32 catches, 793 yards. He played 7 seasons for Sean Payton, and in 5 of those, before he started to slow down, over 15 yards a catch. That's kind of what you're looking for from Marvin Mims Jr., is it not?
I believe so.
We've talked about big receivers, but we haven't talked about the sub 6 foot ones who have had a place for Sean Payton as well. And I would argue that Marvin Mims Jr. can be better than Devery Henderson was. He's got more speed to him. He's got more moves. We see it on punt returns. We may well see it on kickoff returns this year, depending on how the Broncos choose to handle those new rules. But will we see it that much if he has an expansive offensive role? I mean, that's a question. Basically, we know we're going to see Marvin Mims Jr. contribute somehow, some way. the degree to which he expands his menu on offense, I think is going to determine whether we see him on returns like we did last year, where he was a Pro Bowler on punt returns and became so good that after the Buffalo game on Monday Night Football, teams were just kicking away from him because they didn't want to mess with him. So he didn't even qualify to lead the league in punt returns because he didn't have enough punt returns. That's how good he was after a certain point when everyone saw him torch the Bills and they're like, nope, we're not taking the chance there.
Right.
So think about that for a moment. The Pro Bowl punt returner was the guy who didn't have enough punt returns to qualify to lead the league, which tells you about the respect that Marvin Mims Jr. engendered around the league in a really short time. Now, can you take those moves and expand them and apply them to the offense? I mean, basically, what you're thinking here is to take a name from the Wayback Machine of the Broncos. You want him to become perhaps Rick Upchurch, right? Rick Upchurch, greatest punt returner in team history, greatest kickoff returner in NFL in team history. You can argue one of the great returners all time in history. Rick Upchurch eventually became a guy who had nearly 1,000-yard season in year 5. It actually took him a while before he had a huge amount of receptions. He didn't have 20 catches until his 5th year in the league. And that year he had 64 for 937 and 7 touchdowns. And then he was a more prominent part of the offense from that point forward for the rest of his career. I'd like Marvin Mims to get there sooner than Rick Upchurch did.
Yeah, and then Sean Payton offense, you're anticipating that he would. You're also anticipating a second-year leap. You get your feet wet, you learn the system, and Marvin Mims on Thursday, God bless America. Wish somebody should have moved that microphone. Just from a
You'll see.
Just from a viewing standpoint, because Steve Foley was up there and he's tall, and then Marvin Mims came up and it was like this, Mace, like answering questions with the mic right there. Anyway, Mims talked about the leap from last year to this year.
Night and day. I mean, coming in here, I had that hamstring injury when I got here, so sat out a lot. And then, right now, I'm healthy, felt the best I've felt in a while. And also just knowing the coaches, knowing what they're expecting, knowing the routes, all that stuff, and being with the same guys. It's pretty cool.
And, of course, that came on a day where he had the play of the day with Jarrett Stidham, which meant it was against the twos. And the thing that jumps out to me is Trayvon Smith is arguably the fastest player on the defense. And he's in coverage. And you're watching the pass in the air, and you're like, okay, is Marvin going to get to it before Traymon arrives and Traymon's closing? Nope, not at all. It was a well-timed pass. It was a gorgeous over-the-shoulder reception. You can't do it any better. And it was encouraging. We talk about Jarrett Stidham on that play, and it was a good moment for him, no doubt. It was a well-played pass. But also it was a good route and nice job downfield by Marvin Mims Jr. staying one step ahead of everybody and making a graceful catch that would have been a touchdown in a game because nobody would have caught him.
Right. And what I loved about it, Mace, on that play specifically, it was almost one of those out of picture moments because Stidham, timing and rhythm doesn't mean short stuff. Timing and rhythm can mean you got to throw it before your guy makes his break. So Stidham throws it, and it's like Mims isn't even in the picture. And it's like, where's this thing going? And all of a sudden you see this kid, like you're leaving, and he was leaving. And boom, he catches it over the shoulder. It's a big play. It's a touchdown. And that's where timing and rhythm also comes into play.
You can't help but think if they had been able to have more plays like the long bombs that they had in week 2, that maybe Russell Wilson's still around. Because that was another thing. There were brief moments where Russell Wilson actually did fire it deep from the pocket. And look, he's got arm strength to this day. And he can get the ball there. And he did get the ball there. And it just became a frustrating question that lingered as to why we didn't see more of that. Why did you have this incredibly dynamic element in the offense in the first 3 games? And actually, you can even say the first 4 games because he still had to get a couple of catches against Chicago as well. So, he sits there and he gets 233 yards in the first quarter of the season. He gets 144 yards after that, man. What's up? What's up?
Yeah.
That's not making the best use of your personnel. And then you get to week 18 against Las Vegas. You're out of it. Okay. There's no reason. I repeat myself for emphasis, not to play Marvin Mims Jr. a ton. And I'm just going to go through the fact that there were 4 receivers. Marvin Mims Jr. was number 5 in snap count. In week 18, Jerry Jeudy, 38 snaps. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 36. Brandon Johnson, 28. Courtland Sutton, 28. Marvin Mims, 26. No! Marvin Mims Jr. should not rank 5th in receiver snap count. Ultimately, look, you can blame player execution for some things. You can blame coaches for others. Sometimes you're blaming both. Sometimes it's everybody's fault. In this case, ultimately, the relative paucity of snaps from Marvin Mims Jr., that's on the coaches. The coaches control that.
Yep.
Instead, Jerry Jeudy led the Broncos in snaps in that game, in receiver snaps. What good did that do you? Bupkus, he's not here anymore.
As you were going through Mace, I thought you were going to go porn on blondes on us today.
What's going on?
I knew you would get that. Hey, what's going on?
Not
Hey,
Marvin Gaye. What's going on? Talk to me so you can see what's going on. I don't want to mess up the great Marvin Gaye. I can't. Like that's I don't want to sing along with him because I can't possibly do his work justice. I'm
listen and enjoy.
I'm a huge. I celebrate Marvin Gaye's entire catalog. That's an artist I do celebrate the entire catalog.
As you should. Now, you sent over the clip, and I was like, okay, what was the question for Marvin Mims? Because his answer is interesting. He was shorter with his answers, a little tighter. This is just kind of generally what we get from Marvin. But what was your setup? What were you maybe even wanting to get out of Marvin a little bit more? Because, again, his answer is kind of short and a little bit all over the place.
I was asking him specifically that if you could go back to last year and share some information that now that would help you as a rookie. It's a question I sometimes ask second-year guys. Like, what do you wish you would have known then coming into the process?
A lot, honestly. Can't even pick one thing. But, having Jerry in court there, that helped a ton. Having Tim in my ear, too, even though he was hurt, that helped a ton, too. So just, trying to learn everything from them last year while going. It was tough. It's a lot, in and out of the ear, and it's a long season. Start getting banged up and stuff like that. But, now I know what to expect, so I'm ready for it.
It was an interesting answer because he talked about what he learned from other players, but he also said it was a lot. So I wonder if I wonder if the thing that he was really trying to convey there was that he wished he'd known just how much he had to learn, just how much he had to absorb, and where it was going to come from. Maybe he wasn't expecting it from his teammates in that way. Maybe he wasn't expecting that, it's not just this much you have to learn as a rookie. It's like this much. It's like the SNL sketch where Phil Hartman's in there eating Colin Blow cereal. Like you'd have to eat like a pyramid level of bowls in order to match the amount of fiber you're gonna get in one bowl of Colin Blow.
Another thing that I was thinking, Mace, as you retell your question, and you could see him. It's like he wanted to say more, and then he went into press conference mode of like, "Oh, it's great, let's remember that." But I think another thing that maybe he could have been led down that road. These guys aren't here forever.
Yeah,
your resources in football and in life aren't going to always be there, and not to get too heavy with things, but it's like, I think it's important to note, like, at the moment where you can absorb knowledge and wisdom from a resource, you should, because next thing you know, Jerry's traded and Court's not here, and all these sorts of things. So maybe that was also part of his thinking. You could tell that question really got him going before he went into press conference mode of like, it was great to learn. Like, man, in a one-on-one situation, I bet we could have got more from him.
Yeah. The impermanence of life, the impermanence of the NFL.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's why even at the end of a bad season, there's sadness. Because you look around, not everyone's back. He said he got some good advice from Jerry Jeudy. Jerry plays for Cleveland now. He got some good advice to Courtland Sutton. Court hasn't shown up yet. And as we've discussed, even though trading Courtland Sutton is not imminent by any stretch of the imagination, I think the Broncos would like to have him be a part of that. If you find enough from the receivers who are on hand, then you become more amenable to a trade. Because if you say, hey, we've got Josh Reynolds looking good. We got Marvin Mims Jr. growing. We got Lil Jordan Humphrey, who played more snaps than Marvin Mims Jr. last year. That goes back to Sean Payton liking his receivers big. Lil Jordan's a big guy. Lil Jordan's big guy. There's nothing small about Lil Jordan.
Nothing little about him at all.
Yes. Is that not the best name on the team, by the way, in many, many years? Lil Jordan.
It's like Biggie Smalls.
Yes. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, I think that's sort of what he was I think that's part of what he was thinking. Like press conference mode. That's a good way to put it, because man, you can tell when you get somebody to think.
Mm-hmm.
And then pivot back to saying something fine, but I mean, I felt like we were about to get something revelatory there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very close.
Which is why I'll keep asking similar questions, because in that format and taking my shot. I may even ask that of guys who are coming back as free agents. Like it's a question worth asking Mike McGlinchey after year one, and at year one as a Bronco. That's. But he's learning, he's growing. It's evident on the field. I think Marvin Mims Jr. ends up starting this year. I think he ends up playing quite a bit. And the thing I'm fascinated to see is how much we see short intermediate from him as well. Because if you have a quarterback who can get him the ball on time, in stride, then this will give you the chance for some little 5-yard drag routes that become 25-yard gains, because he's got the ability to hit fifth gear so fast, and he can do it quickly, and he can make a move that makes people miss, which is what we see on punt returns. You get some of that skill set out there in the offense. You set him up pretty well. He becomes a really dynamic weapon. He's part of the reason why, Cecil, I expect this offense, even with fits and starts at quarterback, whether it's Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, or Bo Nix learning his way, even with fits and starts, I think this offense is going to be far better and far more efficient than it was last year.
Yep, Marvin Mims is going to be a big part of that because of the timing and rhythm that will be present now that the Sean Payton offense is back. We're present here for you Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. right here on YouTube. But Mace, I'm fascinated by how people can help us out on YouTube.
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?